From White Hat Magazine, I'm Chrisella Herzog, and welcome to Bosses Who Brunch. Here at Bosses Who Brunch, we don't buy into the entrepreneurship myth of overnight success. We cover the challenges, celebrate the successes, and talk about what skills and resources are really needed to start a business. This week on Bosses Who Brunch, I sat down with Johan Jensen, the CEO and co-founder of Mobilized Construction. Johan is a native of Denmark, and he was in Salt Lake City as part of the Young Transatlantic Leaders Innovation Initiative, a program from the U.S. Department of State and the German Marshall Fund that provides exchange opportunities for innovators and leaders in Europe and the United States. Mobilized Construction is working on making our infrastructure a little bit smarter by using technology and data to monitor road quality. Then, using micro-public-private partnerships, the company was able to bring their solution into rural areas of Uganda to not only fix roads in remote areas, but also to create jobs. Bosses Who Brunch is a project by White Hat Magazine and is supported by our readers and listeners. If you would like to support the podcast, sign up to become a member at whitehatmag.com/subscribe. Johan, welcome to Bosses Who Brunch. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
So tell me about Mobilized Construction.
So Mobilized Construction is really an idea that has sprung out of a vision to revolutionize how we do road maintenance projects, in particular on the southern hemisphere, where the predominant road infrastructure is unpaved, rural, and generally very hard to maintain on a low budget. So basically, I'm coming from a background working in major public-private partnerships, where a road project easily goes for $100 million, and oftentimes that won't reach the poor farmer somewhere in Kenya. So what we are trying to do really is do the same for public-private partnerships as Mohammed Yunus did for banking. So he did micro lending or microfinance, and we are doing micro-public-private partnerships. So essentially, our goal was to reduce the transaction cost of creating a public-private partnership so much so that we could do PPPs that are worth $10,000 and still be profitable. But right now, our contract size can really go down to $500 and still be profitable because we've really replaced a lot of the overhead cost in creating such a contract.
That's very cool. So tell me a little bit about how your platform works.
So we started out basically thinking about how to utilize the most abundant resource in Africa, which is labor, which is heavily underutilized, which also means that people are poor and living in bad conditions, but our platform really provides them an opportunity to work and make money of their work. So basically, we have developed software that uses an accelerometer. The easiest and most convenient tool could be a smartphone like the one I'm sitting with right here. Even the cheapest smartphones today has a pretty decent quality accelerometer that essentially, if you mount it in your car and you drive over a road, the bumps in the road is being picked up by the car and generates vibrations, and these vibrations are picked up by the accelerometer. Based on that, we can calculate what's called the International Road Roughness Index, which is a very boring term, but very, very important because it's the universal indicator and really the universal standard for road quality. And a lot of people ask us, so if you build or rebuild roads manually, how do you ensure quality? And really, we do that by the same standards and by measuring in the same way as you would do if you're building a new highway here. We create a contract specifying that the road is at a certain standard and has to be brought up to a higher standard. And if that subcontractor doesn't deliver, he or she gets a possibility to improve and get the job done, or else he or she doesn't get paid. So it's not much different. It's just much more technology based and in this way much cheaper.
Sure. So I was looking at your pitch deck a little bit, and so it looks like somebody they get an app on their phone, or maybe like the government gets like this app, and they see where the project needs work, and then they hire somebody through your platform. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically. So first, it's about collecting the data, which I explained before. It's the accelerometer data. So I talked about the smartphone, but we also have a dedicated IoT device. So you don't even need a smartphone, but just a device that you mount inside of the truck or a car, costing $10. And this way, we can kind of crowdsource the data. Then you're correct. Then the government will have a platform, which is basically just a website where they can log on. They'll have a map, and this map will be updated with the road quality data. Then the district engineer can click on a road and see, okay, this is a 20-kilometer road. These pieces are in this quality and these are in another quality. And by just clicking the road, you also get information on are there hospitals near, schools near? How does these things impact the social society in terms of access to healthcare, access to schools? Yeah. How does this road impact access to markets for the low-scale farmer? Mm-hmm. If the governor then can see this very simple cost-benefit analysis and say, okay, it makes sense to fix this road, then he gets a price tag on what it generally costs to repair a road, which is generally for us because we have cut away the heavy machinery, most of the lawyers, most of the civil engineer. We're delivering rural roads at 90% savings, so 10% of the current cost. Mm-hmm. And basically just by clicking on that road, we then take this 20-kilometer road and generate 40 micro contracts. And then you're correct, then the local worker who's been certified through our system can then go in and bid on a road contract, win it, and then basically deliver a job like any other medium or large-scale contracting company. Mm-hmm. So it's really democratizing roadwork projects and creating jobs for bottom of the pyramid consumers.
Yeah, especially in rural areas of these countries where it's hard for those jobs to really get out to those areas. Very cool. Exactly. What was your inspiration for this?
Well, I think it was just a sort of frustration to see a lot of these major public-private partnerships being created and seeing a lot of inefficiencies in them. And while seeing inefficiencies, then seeing a lot of potential in actually delivering public services through them, because it takes some of the risk that an American government can take and puts it onto the private sector. If they deliver, they get paid. And similarly, like if the American governments can't take on that risk, like a Kenyan government is even less likely to do so. So it's really a good tool to mitigate risk and get a quality product delivered. So I was kind of frustrated to see how the overhead cost really prevented this kind of service delivery model to be utilized in Kenya and Uganda, where we're working today.
Mm-hmm. So you're also here in Salt Lake on correct me if I'm wrong, it's a German Marshall Fund exchange program?
Yeah, the German Marshall Fund and the State Department, the US State Department selects 100 European entrepreneurs and 20, I think, from the next cohort, American entrepreneurs that then kind of does an exchange and works with entrepreneurs on the other side of the Atlantic to create better connections. Yeah.
Very cool. So now you're here in Salt Lake and you're kind of talking to people here about maybe implementing some of the IoT part of it in Salt Lake as well, or at least in the United States. So tell me how do these different parts of your idea work together?
Yeah. So one of the things are that that it's difficult to set up a stable sales channel in the sub-Saharan African continent based on basically if we go and sell our services to a Kenyan government, we then also have to go afterwards and sell it to a major donor agency, so the World Bank, etc. So we're really trying to figure out ways to do several products where one of them we see as being kind of a supplement to governments in the Western world. So we're talking with municipal governments in Denmark, but also now here in the Salt Lake area. Because basically our measurement devices are a little bit depending on the market, is 99.99996.7% cheaper than the expensive laser-based analytics tools, which cost between $300,000 and $500,000, where you could use a simple smartphone.
Yeah.
So we are looking at to kind of create a supplemental product where, for example, all the garbage trucks in Salt Lake City, all the public buses would be equipped with our low-cost IoT devices and do daily or weekly road analytics of the entire Salt Lake road network. And then basically, even we don't measure as well as the Hawkeye 2000 laser based equipment, but we do a pretty good job, and that data set can then help the transportation department send trucks, the proper laser equipment on the roads that our data then directs it to.
Very cool.
And at the same time, we're talking with major shipping and logistics companies who are essentially driving blind when they are choosing which road to take their trucks on. So that means that lorries and trucks worth $200,000 and shipments worth even more are just going down a highway that might be very bumpy, which can be a bad thing if let's say you're shipping tomatoes or maybe expensive technology equipment that breaks in this process. And by mounting our devices, we can start optimizing shipping routes so that trucks don't go on those bad roads.
Yeah. So you're manufacturing these devices, or are you partnering with somebody?
Yeah. So right now we are only building the individual devices because they're which are basically handmade by some students, but we are partnering up with someone to manufacture them for us. But it's simply been that we really want to create not the perfect device, but we want to have different opportunities. For example, when we're talking about shipping and logistics companies, it might make sense that we need more than just accelerometer data. We are also using sound data and motion data that can then be plugged into the cargo. And in this way, we can start seeing if there's a major sound and a lot of tomatoes broke or like were damaged, then we can start cross-referencing different data points and get even more precise data that the pothole needs to be so large or so small really in order for the damage to be, and then we can calculate much bigger or better risk profiles. And similarly, if we're talking about Salt Lake City and kind of helping the government figure out which roads to fix, having a video camera in the device makes sense. So we've really been kind of making an adaptable piece of hardware that can be plugged and played straight into very many different situations.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, every winter our roads here are just like potholes everywhere. It's terrible. So I hope they take you up on this. So what are some of the challenges that you've run into while you've been building this?
So I think some of the one challenge is that really a lot of engineers are sitting in this field, and a lot of them will hear our value proposition and hear us saying, we build an algorithm that can replace you. And that's really not what we're trying to say. What we're trying to say is really that we've built an algorithm and some software that can help you do your job and can create better data for you. And that might have been a miscommunication on our end, in particular when we've been working in Kenya and Uganda, because our platform there is very holistic, because it's really like here it's very much directed to just do road analytics and deliver some KPIs to the government. In Kenya and Uganda, it's really the entire system from initial analytics to actually doing the repairs to then validating that the repairs has been done. But we really see it as kind of a tool that supplements, whether it's the high-end technology, we supplement that, and it's a tool that supplements the engineers as well.
Very cool. So do you have like a particular success or a moment you've been really proud of?
So I think we were really proud of launching, or my co-founder is flying to Kenya right as we speak. He bought it 2 hours ago, and we're launching a new larger project there. And one of the things that from my side, because I'm a data geek, I'm very curious to see what we actually can find out there, because our ability to lower the cost of transportation or road quality data means that we can do randomized control trials on road network, and this way we can do much more precise analysis of what does it really mean for an individual household that their road is repaired. How does that impact their health? How does it impact their educational opportunities, their possibilities to go to market? So we really see this as a way of creating new information that might not have been as available or even at all available to the world before now.
Yeah, because one thing that I have talked about a bit as I cover the UN Sustainable Development Goals is that, you know, people do need these roads to be able to access healthcare and to be able to access transportation and shipping and, you know, getting medicines to people and vaccines to people. But if you can't, you know, repair the roads, or if you don't have the data about what roads need repair, like having that data is incredibly valuable. And I don't think a lot of people, at least in the West, realize just sometimes how little data is available.
And I completely agree with you. And luckily, there's coming more and more focus on this. Because some years ago, several books were written on how bad the data was on the sub-Saharan African continent. But we and many other startups are basing our business model more and more around data. So, and thankfully, there's more of a focus on it. But as you mentioned yourself, it's very important that the roads work. And one of our struggles and one of the obstacles we've met has been that all of the many foundations, we've gotten help, and we are very grateful for the help that we've gotten, but many foundations that want to work on access to markets, they work on training the farmers to get to the market. They don't want to fix the road because that's unsexy. Or if people want to work on access to healthcare, that's more like creating ambulances that have 4x4 drive, not fixing the road. And also, again, we've worked with Shanti Health Clinic in Uganda that is where we've built health clinic based roads. So it's not everyone, but we at least a lot of times get the feeling that because roads really are the arteries that connects the entire society, then a lot of institutions that really should care more about basic infrastructure kind of kicks the ball around because it's not their primary concern. And it's true, but for example, with Shanti Uganda, which is a health clinic for mothers, it was basically impossible for the moms to get a vehicle to get to the health clinic. And if they could, they were actually like, when they were going into labor, they were sitting on the back of a motorbike because that was the only vehicle that could actually pass these roads. So after rebuilding it, we lowered the transportation time to Shanti by more than 50%, the cost of getting to Shanti by more than 50%, and increased traffic by 400%. So so it's also just to give a shout out to those who actually recognize that this is an important theme.
Yeah, and that is one gripe I have with the international development community is that you have these organizations and they're very good at what they do, and they're very good in their little silo. But they don't necessarily look outside of their silo to see how major infrastructure projects could affect what they do. So. Yeah.
And it's fair, because if you're then running a health clinic where there was literally no doors into the different waiting rooms, etc., so you could sit outside and you would hear a woman giving birth because that's just how. So if you can't afford doors, it's hard to think about how do we fix roads on the other side. So it's completely understandable, but. Sometimes basic infrastructure is just a necessity.
And sometimes it's overlooked. So I love that you guys are taking like these major projects and you're breaking it down into, these more manageable sort of projects. I think you said micro infrastructure.
Yeah, micro public-private partnerships. That's what we want to or try to brand it as. Micro and PPPs.
I love that. I love it.
Sure.
So as you've been building this company, what has been maybe your favorite resource for starting up?
Well, I think for me it's really just been in the company we call it playing the stupid card. Basically, because I feel too many entrepreneurs have grown up too much in kind of a culture where it's about looking awesome on the outside. So even when you ask for help, you try to frame it like, so I don't really know that, but I know most of it. So, but can you please? And then that doesn't really entice people to help them. So sometimes when we really don't, or when we don't know what to do, instead of trying to explain that we know 80% of it, but we don't know the last 20%, we ask for help and we really say we don't know anything here. And then that might mean that we get a little bit of double explaining, but I also feel that it's been a vital resource because people actually really do want to help, especially if you have a vision and that has a positive impact on the world. And
yeah. I love that. That's really cool. So I trip entrepreneurs up with this question all the time. What is your vision for Mobilized Construction in 5 years?
So the way that I see it, there's no reason why we shouldn't be the platform or the way to repair roads across Africa, and not even just Africa, but the sub-Saharan, the southern hemisphere. In a context, if Kenya started fixing their roads using manual labor, that would create about 35,000 new jobs, which is equivalent of, in like putting it in an American context, it's creating 8 new General Motors overnight in terms of employment numbers, which is insane employment numbers. And seeing the amount of refugees fleeing from bad conditions or migrants fleeing from bad conditions, we really see both a huge potential for creating a lot of social impact, but also at our price points at delivering roads at 10% of what the World Bank procures roads for, there's a huge potential here.
Well, best of luck. That is a
Thank
really
you very
great
much.
vision. So what support do you need right now as you get started?
So that's a good question. We're currently looking for, we're still looking for how to exactly crack the scaling, because doing one project here and another project there is not the way to really scale it. But we're working with different partners across East Africa to kind of collect data and do road analytics. We're working with shipping and logistics companies, want to work with cab drivers, etc., to just collect the data. And when we have the data, we can then at a much easier point just go to the local government and say, hey, we've created 200 contracts for you. You really just have to click the button here and sign up, and then we can fix them for you and give you the savings potential. So at the one side, we're really figuring out how to scale up the data side of things, but also we're raising funding where we're looking for about $400,000 to take us to the next level, where we have a matching $400,000 to go with it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, good luck. And where can somebody find out more information?
At mobilizedconstruction.com, or send me an email at Johan at mobilizedconstruction.com.
And Johan is spelled Johan.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Johan. It's been great to talk with you today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Bosses Who Brunch. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. Bosses Who Brunch is a production of White Hat Magazine. To keep up on future episodes and meetups, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at White Hat Mag. You can also find more information about White Hat Magazine and Bosses Who Brunch at whitehatmag.com.